Here we go. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started on recording effective instructional videos in your classroom, your virtual classroom, or use face-to-face. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with why. Why would you want to record instructional videos? And on the right here, we have a resource from Catlin Tucker. She's been really popular right now, doing a lot of work around blended and virtual learning. And these come from the building blocks of online learning. And if you see at the top there, we have instruction and we have modeling. Those are two very key pieces in making sure that the instructor is 100% in and needed, right? We need the teacher, like Jim said in his opening session, was that we still need to be there and we still need to show and guide our learners through the process of learning and showing them the targets and what they need. And so that's really the area that we're going to be focusing on tonight. And some of the things that we do with our videos is that we deliver that explicit instruction and we model for our students what it is that we want them to do with their learning. Another reason for recording would be to do some tutorials that would be like how to navigate their learning management system. If you're using a Google Classroom and students are really struggling for submitting assignments or taking a quiz, doing a screen recording and videotaping that tutorial can really help guide and model what you want them to do. And then another one that Amanda's going to talk a little bit about too is the provide worked examples. This gives that student an opportunity to see a proficient response. We wanted to show them that the process that we go through as we learn and provide that explicit instruction of how to do something. So those, again, just kind of anchoring us tonight in why we would do instructional videos. It's not just like a checkbox, like, hey, I've got my video up for the day, but really having a purpose that this is our time because I can't be with you face to face to teach you. I'm going to still provide you some instruction. We need that instead of just assigning work for students to do, we need to guide them there. And that's really that idea of providing that instruction and that modeling. So to get us started, I think tonight, Amanda and I are going to kind of take you on a little bit of a journey of how we lesson plan. When this all started in August, and my husband is a principal in the district, and he's like, I think we need some work on instructional videos because I think this is going to be a big thing. We have to get instructional videos out to students. He's like, can you make some lessons for me? And of course, I indulged him and started like thinking through, like, okay, how would I think through a video lesson? I'm not there face to face to give that feedback, that online or the immediate feedback, and really monitor my kids as they're learning. But I've got to turn my teaching into what it's going to look like for them to watch it on a screen. How do I keep them engaged? How do I get the information across to them in an efficient way and in an effective way? So this graphic is actually like really popular right now on Twitter. Um, it comes from two ladies that have done a lot of work with blended learning, and they shared this graphic out, and it's just an image that keeps reappearing in my feed. And I said, this is so simple. This is something we can do. Like, let's think about this in our videos and how we can take this structure of a mini lesson. This is what you would do face to face, right? Some basic gradual release things. So let's see how we can transfer this into a video so that the students have that clarity and know exactly what it is that you want them to be doing. Amanda is going to share out in the chat a resource for tonight. And I think, yep, okay. So it's a Google Drive. Oh, it's going to take me there. And what you're going to see here tonight are some resources for our demo scripts, and as well as that graphic, if you guys wanted to see that graphic. So you'll be able to follow along with us as we talk through how we planned instructional videos. All right, so let's start to think. Um, okay, tonight we're going to start with reading, go to writing, and then we'll follow up with math. Um, One of the first things that we do as teachers is we have to figure out what it is that we want to teach, right? We have to determine our learning targets. And there's a couple of places that you go in teaching wonders to determine what it is that I need the students to know. You follow a pacing guide. These pacing guides can be found on the SharePoint if you haven't been able to navigate to those yet. And they have your student-friendly learning targets broken out, which is pretty great for determining, okay, where are we starting? And then you want to go to your resource. And our primary resource that we use is Wonders, Balanced Literacy. This screenshot comes from the shared reading lesson from Wonders. And I sat down and I looked at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't put all of this into a lesson. Like my video is going to be 20 minutes long. What lesson, what target am I going to choose and then teach all of this? And so really that's where you as that expert teacher comes in to say, what is going to be my focus today? And so in my shared reading lesson, um, I narrowed it down and I said, okay, I'm not teaching phonics at this time. I'm not teaching, I have another lesson that I do for my phonics and phonemic awareness. But during the shared reading, I really want to get into that comprehension skill of finding key details. And you can see over here, I have that. Over here is finding key details. It's on my pacing guide, and I have it right over here talking a little bit about in the first read section. You're thinking about the key details and how you teach your students to find those. They can't just find them automatically. You have to teach them how to do that. And so I felt like those two things were the important pieces for my lesson for my shared reading that week. And that's what you want to do. You want to take your resources and determine what it is that I'm teaching. What are those lessons, those key pieces from there? The next step was more like the time consuming part, and this is where maybe you guys are getting if you're struggling with doing these videos or don't know where to start, you might be overwhelmed with what materials you need to use. um, I find that um, you know oh, do I do it online? Oh, I have the big book here. I can do it here. You want to consider what you're going to do, how you're going to want to present it, and what's going to be best. So you can have your physical materials. This is like that old school way of recording, right? You just set your computer up and you video yourself holding your materials up, making sure that it's nice and clear. But if that's not going to work, you might want to use those online materials. I did that in a couple of different places with recording just straight from the Wonders resource, the screen recording as I taught the lesson. And then another resource that I felt was really great for processing and um, presenting my materials in an organized way was using Google Slides. I would take snips from what I wanted out of the Wonders resource and put it into Google Slide because I felt like it really hit all of the things that I needed to explain in my lesson. So once you have that idea of like what are the essential materials I need to teach this lesson, you can then start to think about how this is all going to get put together. Um, so I know this sounds weird because you don't do this anymore. If you're an efficient teacher, you're like, okay, I've got my target, I've got my materials, I can put all of these things together. But one way to really make your lesson effective and work efficiently is to script your lesson out and really write it like you'd say it. I tried to wing it a couple of times, and when I went to record, it was like blank face, right? Like, oh man, or I just talked way too much and went off script. And I was like, okay, if I script this out, if I take a moment to read through what is exactly I want to say, you're gonna increase that teacher clarity, which is one of those high effect sizes that Hattie has researched. And it's like only say what you need to say. Don't put all the fluff in there. Be as direct and as clear as possible. So some of the things that I found when writing your script that was effective. Um, connect to prior knowledge. You're going to find that if you're building your comprehension lessons out for the week, if you're talking about your wonders reading lessons, or if you're building your phonics lessons out for the week and you're building on to those information, think about how your student is going to watch it. They're going to watch your Monday video, and then they're going to come back Tuesday and watch their next video. Try to connect what you're doing to the skill that you did the day before. Um, the next piece is really being able to mark spots where you want to stop. I know that we're teachers that love to read picture books and all of those things, but really don't stop a million times, but don't stop too few times. Find a spot where it's going to really be able to model what it is that you want to be teaching during that reading time. So my lesson for this snip here was visualizing. Well, every time I stopped, I didn't ask a question about a short A word and I didn't ask a question about a key detail. I really thought about, okay, I want them to think about the visualizing here. Um, and then the next one is at the end, if you're using that structure from the digital mini lesson, the do part, it should really connect to what it is that you want them to go and do and apply it. There's a couple of ways you can do this depending on your LMS. In Google Classroom, you can embed your instructional video right into a quiz. And so they watch your video and then they have to answer 2 or 3 questions about the video that they just watched. There's your check for understanding. Did they actually watch the video and did they understand what it is that you wanted to teach them in that section? So that's the flow for reading. If you want to add on anything or ask a question in the chat, feel free to. We do have some time at the end where Amanda's going to kind of give us some tips and tricks for planning these, but it's going to be the basic same structure for the next for the writing piece as well. Let's take a look. Okay, so I hadn't done any lessons for writing, and so when we started putting together this session, I was like, okay, I gotta think like a writing teacher now. How do you take Lucy Calkins, these huge lessons, and all of the words that she has in her lessons, and how do you put this into a 3 to 5 minute video? Um, this is insane. Um, and so it really took me to think through. I opened up a second grade. I don't know if we got how many second grade teachers you have, but you might be teaching this right now, right? This narrative writing. I opened up to the first session and I remember teaching Lucy Calkins and having to sift through some of her wording and her teaching and say, what is the most important thing? And that's exactly what you have to do when you're trying to put an instructional video together for writing. What's the most important thing? What is it that I'm asking the learners to engage with in this lesson? So I went to my pacing guide, took a target from the pacing guide. Students will write a sequenced personal narrative, including action, thoughts, and feelings. I actually broke this into be even more specific. This is learning targets pretty big. And in my demo script, I broke it down even further to just writing a small moment. Um, and then I looked at Lucy Calkins and I really thought about what would be the essential pieces that the students would need to know in order to launch into this lesson? And one of the pieces is accessing the mentor text for that section. And so taking a look at the resources when I thought about this lesson was is thinking about how I would share those resources. So the two pieces that I used to create this lesson was the Google Slides. And you can see here in my snip, I have just 2 that I wanted to share. And I created a whole bunch, but then I was like, you know what? Teacher clarity. What are the 2 things I'm going to ask them to do here after talking with Amanda about it? I was like, I'm asking them to do too much. Well, in this lesson, we're talking about Owl Moon, which is something that I'm going to have them like listen to outside of this lesson. I'm not going to read Owl Moon to them even though the lesson calls for that. I want to have them have that read ahead of time. And then the other thing is that I'm asking them to come up with a list of ideas. I'm not asking them to start writing at this lesson. That's going to be the next one. I'm just coming up with ideas. And so I prepared here my ideas. Um, I thought, well, I could model write for them. Nope, I'm going to just give them my ideas. I'm not going to share the screen and do model writing here because that's not the goal. I'm not doing sentence structure or lesson or spelling at this time. That might be another lesson, but this lesson was create a list of small moment ideas that you could write about. So you can follow along on that script that Amanda shared in there and kind of see what I said. Um, I did try to snip this. It might look a little blurry on your side. Um, but again, write it like you'd say it. Um, if you read through this and if you've heard me share stories or think about or do a model lesson, like I wrote it exactly how I would say it to my students. And it really, like that process really helps you get familiar with the content as well as be that like concise and teacher clarity piece. So for writing, some things to think about when you're writing your script. Um, if if it connects to a mentor text and if it's valuable, like you need to make that mention of it, include it. If you don't need it, don't include it. I felt like in this session that I needed to include it because we were talking about how when we choose a small moment story, we don't just choose any old thing. We think of a moment that makes us think and we makes us feel and makes our reader think and feel. And so that's where I needed to mention that because Jane Yolen has this great book that makes us think and feel. We want to be like that. So I included that. The next thing too is sharing your own writing. Students want to see that, and there's still room in your instructional video for that. So think about ways that you can be efficient with that. Instead of writing on the board and taking that time, can you have something pre-written? If it is sentence structure or spelling where they need to see you writing, that might mean that you need to still have that. Um, and then the final thing is give clear direction as to what they will write today. Sometimes I think Lucy ends with like, all right, now children, go off and write. But like be direct in your lessons where you're saying you will complete, a list of ideas. You will submit these to me on the Google Classroom. Again, that teacher clarity and that concise language to make sure that students understand. So that's what I have available, like that the process for reading and writing. Again, the demo um, scripts are available in that Google folder. And then at the end, we're going to share out um, some video lessons that I did. And it's just a playlist of demo lessons just to get you guys started to see how did that script turn into an actual lesson, like how does that translate? All right, Amanda, do you want to take the screen or do you want me to click?
You can go ahead and just leave yours up and click for me if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so now we get to talk about the good stuff, math, which is kind of my niche that I have a huge passion for. And so the first thing is the next few slides that you'll see for math do echo and mirror exactly what Katey just showed you for reading and writing. And that wasn't by accident. That was purposeful. Last spring when we transitioned to online learning, that was a huge piece of the feedback we got from students and parents is just having to navigate to all of these different places. So if we keep that same design for those instructional videos for reading, writing, and math, our students will know what to expect when they open a video. That pattern of teach and show and those things that Katey shared, if they know that pattern and they know what to expect, then it sets them up for success in completing work when they are at home remote learning. And so the design for math is very similar. So the first thing again, just looking at determining your learning targets. So this is an example from 3rd grade. Again, we went directly to the pacing guide and looked at what standards they were going to be covering in this unit. looking at their first unit of instruction for the year. This is from their second investigation, so they're a couple weeks in, and it's session 2.3. And I know it's a little small on the screen there, but you'll see that red arrow is pointing to that first focus point, and it says, it says using known multiplication facts to determine the product of more difficult facts. There are 2 more bullets there, but again, just that idea of teacher clarity and what do I want to focus in this really short, purposeful instructional video, narrow it down, choose what your focus is. And so that first bullet is what we decided to focus in on. The left-hand side there for the pacing guide, you'll see then those 2 arrows that point to standard 30A1 and 30A2. And so those align directly to that bullet. So again, it's just giving us that focus and not needing to cover all the standards or everything in the entire lesson, but what am I going to focus in this brief video that I want students to walk away with and be able to do. Katie, if you don't mind going to the next screen, please. Thank you. So the next screen, it's actually the same as Katie's, except for math. So again, the second piece here is thinking about how you want to present your materials. Again, that first option of sometimes it's just best to have the physical materials and be able to hold them up in the screen and show them to your students. My K1-2 teachers holding up cubes, pattern blocks, those type of things can be very helpful for students just to see on the screen and see you manipulating those and talking about those. The online materials in the Savvis platform are also very helpful. You have access to all of the teacher presentations. So I've seen a lot of teachers just pull up the teacher presentation for the piece that they want to cover and do a screencast with that presentation open, and they talk over top of it. I will tell you that with those online materials, my first and second year of teaching, I spent hours upon hours copying and pasting and reworking those teacher presentations into flip charts for the Active Inspire Promethean boards. And while that was good and all, it was me not trusting what was there in that resource. And so just simply pulling open those teacher presentations is sometimes enough. You don't need to create this big elaborate thing. Sometimes use what's already created there for you and it will do its job. You'll see the little snip there on the right of one of those teacher presentations that align to those standards that I just talked about for 3rd grade. You have all of those tools on the right-hand side, so you can write, you can stamp, you can erase, you can do a text box and type right in there, and you can talk through that while you're videoing for your students. And then the third option there too, sometimes the teacher presentations, if there's something that you feel you need to elaborate on that's not available in the teacher presentation, that is a time to use Google Slides and maybe do those snips of certain pieces or type something in that you want to specifically cover based on what you're seeing from your students and their specific needs. So again, just thinking about what is my purpose for this video and what do I need students to take away from it, and deciding which materials you want to use for that. Katie, if you would go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So then again, that mapping out your script for the math lesson. Again, the same procedure and same process. You'll see those same ideas that Katie mentioned. So you'll see the greet, the teach, the show, and the do, and then a closing at the end for your students. So again, just writing it out like you would say it for the students is super helpful. You know, as you get going with these, you might be able to do them more in bullet points. But again, like Katie said, for that teacher clarity piece, scripting it out can really help you focus on what you're wanting students to take away with it and not getting too wordy as well. Again, connecting to prior knowledge of lessons, the teach part there kind of opens up. I know it's a little small on the screen, but again, that Google link is in the chat for you, and you can open up this whole script there to use as an example. But that teach part does connect it back to the multiplication work that they've been doing. So saying, okay, here's what we did yesterday. We kind of talked about this. Here's how it connects to what we're doing today. Gives students that entry point into the lesson for the day and what you're trying to share with them. Again, marking points to stop and connect or model the learning target. You'll see in red there, there's those pause points. And I don't know if you're like me, I'm someone who, I would like to say I'm a good pauser, but I'm not. I'm someone who feels the need to fill that space. And you don't need to. So if you're like me, one of the tips or tricks that I would suggest is, and something Jim mentioned too, is having some music to maybe play for a quick 30 seconds or a minute while students are working or something, or working out on a side piece of paper, before you share back that next part of your script. That can be a way to keep popping in with different comments and things during that time, because that can take away from the focus of the learning for your video. And then the last piece there, connect with an assignment or check for understanding. Again, that do piece at the very end will connect them out and tell them exactly what activity pages to go in and do then what's been assigned in their Savvis account in this case. If you're using Google Classroom or Seesaw and you want them to go there, that is fine as well. That is completely up to you. The other thing that I wanted to mention on this slide as well, you'll see the blue on my script there on the left that says language from the teacher manual, see blueprint. And then you'll see the little snip I took of the teacher manual and those blue prompts. Those are throughout your teacher manuals, and they're just good questions to ask that you would use to guide your conversations in the classroom. And they can also guide your conversations for asynchronous learning as well. And so don't reinvent the wheel. If that's the focus for the day, you can use those same good questions in your instructional video that you would use in a face-to-face classroom. So I maybe tweaked the language a little bit just to make myself feel more comfortable, and it felt more conversational with the transitions I was trying to make, but it's still that same idea from the teacher manual. So use those as a guide. Don't reinvent the wheel there, use what you have. And so that kind of brings me to the end for math. Again, it's the same process that Katey followed for reading and writing. And again, I think if we structure them very similarly, students will know what to expect when they open those videos, and prepare to watch them and then apply the learning when we're not face to face with them. Katey, if you want to go ahead and flip to the last screen here. So this is our last screen, and we just wanted to provide you with some pro tips as we send you off here to create more of your own instructional videos. You know, right now we're kind of relying on these, especially on Fridays, since at elementary we are face-to-face Mondays through Thursdays. I anticipate that if we need to transition back to level 2 or even level 3 as we continue the year, these will become even more important. So just some quick pro tips to remind you of as you go off and prepare to develop some of these instructional videos. The first one, again, is just know your learning target and narrow your focus. Be really purposeful and really, how do I want to say this? Aggressive is the word that's coming to mind, but I don't know if that's the best word. But just be really clear and narrow in on what you want to do in paring down your lesson. For math, I saw some great videos come out last spring before we learned and before we grew, but they were 20 to 30-minute videos. And so we were getting lost in all of these other pieces. And they just needed to really focus in on what their purpose was for the learning there. Which then goes to the next bullet. These videos should really be between 3 and 5 minutes long. If you're kindergarten or first grade, you know, in that range of 3 minutes especially, they have a hard time maintaining their attention beyond that in the classroom. So I'm sure they do at home as well. So if you're getting to that 8, 9, 10-minute range, really try and re-record or practice again and see how you might pare that down for students to make sure that they're engaged during that time. That third bullet there, we can't stress enough, is to plan. It is really important to plan prior to developing these videos. If you have a good plan in place, you will have a good video in your outcome. So that planning piece is really important. Run through it once or twice before recording. I will say I had to give a presentation for a course that I'm in probably at the end of August, and I had a 20-minute window, and the first couple times I ran through it, I was sitting at about 45 minutes, and I was like, this is not going to work. They were going to cut me off after 20 minutes. So but I planned and I ran through it a couple of times. I actually just got in a Zoom meeting by myself and recorded it in Zoom and watched it back to see myself presenting it. So it doesn't hurt to run through it once or twice beforehand before you get ready to record. The next one, begin with tools in your comfort zone. We know that there are a lot of emails going around, a lot of documents going around that have links to great resources, and they are great. But you can get lost in that world and go down a rabbit hole of learning several different tools as well. So just remember, begin with what you feel most comfortable with, keep it simple, and then as you get up and rolling, maybe add something else in or try something new. The last one is check out the video recording sessions, and those are the next sessions that will be coming up in the next 40-minute window here. There's some sessions on recording with Screencast-O-Matic and Screencastify, and I think the other one is using Studio within Canvas. And so at the elementary level, if you need to learn more about the tools that you can use, that Screencast-O-Matic and Screencastify will be really helpful for you. I did want to point out just the graphic that I put on this page, and I thought it was appropriate for this in particular. When we start thinking about videos, we want to make them interesting and interactive. And sometimes we can end up on that first pathway where we loop around and we loop around and we loop around, and it takes us a very long time to get to the final learning that we want our students to take away. And so in these instructional videos, we're really looking for that second pathway from A to B. Here's what I need my students to know. Here's what I need them to be able to do after the video. And so I think just keep that in mind as you are designing and developing your instructional videos. And I will pause there to see if there's any questions in the chat. I know there were a couple of things there that popped up. Or Katey, if you have anything else to add.
They were talking about online math manipulatives, and it looks like our participants have kind of started to answer their own questions, which is amazing. They're sharing ideas. So if you have any specific online math manipulatives that you guys have been using, feel free to share them in the chat. I also put in a playlist to the demo videos that I got roped into doing in August. So you can check them out. I feel like I would do such a better job if I were to redo them again, but it gives you an idea of the different approaches. So really just thinking about, do I stand in front of my video and just video old school? Do I use a screen recording program? The more you can get your face on the recording, the better. And I think like that's that personal connection. Your kids want to see you. I think that, share away, create your own. I would love to see any of your instructional videos if you want to share them out. You can make your own YouTube playlist and share them out. Become YouTube famous. So, Erica Baker dropped something in the chat too. Thank you guys. This is what we want, sharing those resources. So if there are any questions, we are happy to answer them. If not, you are welcome to head to your next, hold on. There's 5 minutes in between. So what I would recommend doing is maybe, I don't know, I guess I didn't know that. I don't know the protocol.
Do you mind if I steal the screen from you really quick?
Yes, go ahead.
And while I do that, just to mention, Katey, there was a question about our presentation. I don't know if you can add the PowerPoint to your Google shared drive that you shared with them in the chat there. If we can add our presentation to that,
do that.
We can get that in that Google Drive. It is also available in the Canvas course. If you click on that October 6th link on that first page, it'll take you to the table that has the sessions here. That's what I was going to share. So if I pull this back up so you can see it. in the Canvas course, you'll see this same screen, but that first box where you see Katey and my names there for effective instructional videos, it is linked there. So if you click directly on that, it'll take you to the PowerPoint as well. So we have about 5 minutes here. Well, no, we have 2 minutes before our session ends, and then you have a 5-minute window. So if you stay in this breakout room, Rod and Adam will be joining this room to go over screen recording with Screencastify or Screencast-O-Matic. If that is something you feel that you don't need at this time, or you're interested in something else, you could certainly shift to breakout room 2. That's again screen recording with Canvas. And then attendance options, if you want to explore that and see what teachers are doing with that. Andy and Nicole will be hosting that in breakout room 3. And then breakout room 4, Jim and Katey will be going through using Flipgrid for engagement. So that might be something you're interested in as well. So you're welcome to stay here in breakout room 1. You should have the option at the bottom of your screen. It might be the 3 dots that say more, where you can click that and open the breakout room window and join a different room. But with that, that brings us to the end of our session, and you have about a 5-minute window here to take a break and then choose what session you would like to do for the next round. Thank you all.